Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Minich, and in this segment I'm going to be talking about the love system of health, which correlates to the color green. So in this part I'm going to be talking more about the cardiovascular system and how it connects to plant-based foods. So I'll talk a bit about plants and how they help to heal us on multiple levels. I'll get into a process of methylation, which definitely ties into cardiovascular health and homocysteine levels. And then I'll leave you with some ideas for green-colored phytonutrients, things that we find in green-colored foods. The beauty of plants is that they have many effects in the body. We would call that pleiotropic, meaning many effects. So, for example, if we look at chamomile, look at all of the different uses of chamomile across the board for different conditions. That it's not just to calm the nerves. It can be used for so many different things, for gastrointestinal issues, for allergy, even for topical use, for inflammation. This really provides testament to the fact that plants are very powerful. Garlic is the same way. If we look at the plant of garlic and all the things that it's capable of doing, we see this long list of diverse effects in the body, cutting across many different pathways. Curcumin is said to have the activity of 16 different pharmacological agents. I think that so many people are really turning to things like turmeric to help with reducing inflammation, but then also helping with a number of other things too. So the beauty of plants is that they can help to modulate dysfunctional signals within the cell. We need plants. I really have seen that no matter what eating style people choose, it's most important that people have plants. Even if they're following a high-fat ketogenic diet or a Paleolithic diet, or of course vegan and vegetarians tend to have more, but not all of them. So having plants can help to turn down the dysfunctional noise of chronic disease at the level of the cell. And one of the nice things about plants is that if we have small amounts of many colors, of many different kinds of plants, they actually work better. You'll see this quote from an article saying that these findings indicate that botanical diversity plays a role in determining the bioactivity of high vegetable and fruit diets, and that smaller amounts of many phytochemicals may have greater beneficial effects than larger amounts of fewer. So let me cover some of the different vitamins and even nutrients that relate to heart health. Vitamin K is one of the biggest ones that I think of in green foods, and that's why people that are on anti-clotting medications are often told to watch their green food intake because of the amount of vitamin K that leads to changes in clotting. So there are many different forms of vitamin K, but the one that's found in plant foods is called phytoquinone. So it's vitamin K1. It is fat soluble, so we do need a little bit of fat when we take in vitamin K. It's needed as a cofactor for many different aspects. It can also play a role in arterial calcification, which is why we talk about it in relationship to cardiovascular health, in addition to, of course, its role in blood clotting. So when it comes to supplemental dosing, what I have seen in the literature supplementally is about 1 milligram per day is what we see for the benefits. There is a connection between calcium, vitamin D, and vitamin K, looking at how the trio of those things work together and how each of them can be very supportive of the other's activity. There are some very good resources talking about vitamin K, and I do truly believe that vitamin K is like the next vitamin D. We've heard so much about vitamin D, and now I think that we're going to start seeing more about vitamin K because it does have these very plant-based pleiotropic effects. It works on multiple systems simultaneously. I want to talk about magnesium because we need magnesium throughout the body. It's typically used in 300 different reactions and many different body systems. But typically I think of the heart. I think of cardiovascular health with magnesium because it really does help with things like blood pressure. It helps to move things through the body. It creates a sense of expansion, relaxation. So there are many different forms of magnesium. Some of the forms of magnesium work better on the gut, creating more motility in the gut, and other forms of magnesium get absorbed so that it could be better for calming the heart, helping with blood pressure. Potassium is along those same lines when we're talking about cardiovascular health, and when I think of magnesium, I often think of potassium as its partner. And when we look at potassium, it is found predominantly in fruits and vegetables, and we know that that's a good thing. It can help with things like heart palpitations, cardiac arrhythmias, even hypertension. And in fact, there are a number of diuretics, potassium-sparing diuretics. And so we have to look at our potassium balance. And this is typically something that a cardiologist will be monitoring if somebody's on medication. And they're going to be looking at potassium levels. So typically you can find potassium in a supplement at certain doses. Certain foods contain high levels of potassium. Usually people think of a banana when they think of potassium, but actually the green food avocados contain even more potassium than a banana. So when we think of potassium and magnesium combined, we think of the net dietary acid load being reduced. The body becomes much more alkaline, more alkalizing. Another nutrient is coenzyme Q10. CoQ10 is used ubiquitously, which hence its name, ubiquinone, ubiquinol. It's everywhere. It's needed throughout our body. It's very similar in structure to vitamin K. It's not essential. We can make it in the body, but under conditions of cardiovascular health, where we've got issues with energy production or neurological issues, we might need more. So taking in some supplemental sources of coenzyme Q10 can be a good thing. And for people on medications like statins, typically we see lower amounts of coenzyme Q10 in the body. So it can be a little bit pricey, coenzyme Q10, but there is a range that can be taken. Anything from 100 to 200 milligrams per day could be good for general cardiovascular health. So here are some doses that people can look at for just recommending as global amounts for different patients, but then tailoring for that individual based on their own body needs. So for people over 40, I tend to think it's good to have some amount of coenzyme Q10 on a somewhat regular basis. If there's hypertension or the use of a statin, definitely to have some more consistent amount of coenzyme Q10. And you'll see on this list too some neurological conditions like Parkinson's, like Alzheimer's too. Since we're talking about green, it's worthwhile to talk about green foods and superfood powders. And so if we're not getting enough of the green foods in our diet, here might be a reason to supplement with a green food powder. And this could be anything from alfalfa grass to barley grass to wheatgrass, to different microgreens. We can find those typically in a lot of those superfood powders. So think all things green here, whether it's chlorophyll, chlorella, spirulina, can be very protective. In fact, there was this study that was published in 2015 showing that chlorella supplementation for just 2 weeks to only 6 women had reduced levels of carcinogens. So these are the heterocyclic amines that typically we see in the average diet. So chlorella is very healing. Just even small amounts can help the body to better ward off things that come in and invade it. Can also decrease dioxin levels. So when we see women who are lactating and nursing their child, typically what we see is that breast milk can be high in different toxins such as dioxin. And so when women were given chlorella supplements, the levels of that dioxin were reduced in the breast milk. Chlorophyllin, this is a stabilized form of chlorophyll. So you tend to find this in a supplement. It's where it's a bit more stable. It doesn't break down as readily. And we know that chlorophyll can help with so many different aspects, whether it's of detoxification, it's an antioxidant, it helps to preserve the DNA from damage. Now, when we think of green foods, I definitely want to make sure I'm talking about the cruciferous vegetable family, because there are so many supplements these days looking at different glucosinolates or isolates from crucifers. So things like indole-3-carbinol, or even sulforaphane. Sulforaphane is another active from cruciferous vegetables, typically from broccoli, where you can see here it converts in the body. And so it's important to have a supplement that has the right amount and the preserved amount of sulforaphane, because it does break down very readily. So sulforaphane is great for detoxification. It helps the body's antioxidant defense system. It's also starting to be shown now for even helping with things like autism. Green tea. So many different things here. It's helpful in being an anti-diabetic agent. It helps with thermogenic activity, our metabolism. And so in general, I tend to think of aiming for 3 cups of green tea per day. And as I mentioned before, I think it's important to bring in a little bit of the bioflavonoids from something like lemon into the green tea to preserve the catechins, to keep those working even more. So when we think of the heart, we might think of lipids, high triglycerides, high cholesterol, high oxidized LDL cholesterol. That's pretty much most concerning now, is to look at inflammation of the fats. So what do? There are so many different directions to go into in this area. So consider this just a very high level overview. You know, I do think of garlic. Garlic is great for helping with establishing a balance of lipids, looking at plant sterols, which are also good, and the fish oils, which are purported to be good for reducing triglycerides in the blood. And triglycerides can lead to fatty liver, fatty muscle, all kinds of different issues, and it's one of the risk factors for metabolic syndrome too. Hesperidin, so when I think of green and I think of all these plant foods, I think of all the different flavonoids. Green tea and teas are high in flavonoids, but there are many different flavonoids, and these different flavonoids that we find in nature are important for the venous tone, capillary health, making circulation better and less stuck and stagnant. So for varicose veins or varicosities, or just even broken capillaries, getting back on track with forming integrity of the blood vessel wall through the help of these bioflavonoids. Now, I also want to mention bitter plants, because many of the green foods, they don't taste sweet. They have a certain taste profile, and some of them are bitter. So this idea of bitter plants, we might even translate into what I was speaking about with the gut, the fire system. So some of the bitter plants can help with the gut, coincidentally, can help with stimulating the parietal cells in the stomach to produce acid, and also can help with stimulating bile, which can help in the absorption of fat. So these are some examples of some bitter plants, which you can, of course, get through a supplement, and take those in order to help with things like metabolism. Of all those different bitters, one that has got a lot of attention, at least in the supplement world, is berberine. Berberine is derived from many different plant sources, everything from barberry to golden seal to celandine to Oregon grape. These are some of the common ones. And it does many different things. It can help to lower blood sugar. It can help to lower blood lipids. And it may even be helpful, because it is bitter, it helps in warding off some of the parasites and different gut microorganisms. So you might see out there a lot of attention being given to berberine. There was a meta-analysis that was published in 2015 looking at 27 different clinical trials with more than 2,500 patients, and essentially what they found was that berberine had a comparable therapeutic effect on type 2 diabetes, hyperlipidemia, and hypertension with no serious side effect. Now, methylation, I did mention very early on, I would mention this briefly. With cardiovascular health, there is some concern about elevated levels of homocysteine in the blood. This can be easily measured through a practitioner. High homocysteine is seen to be damaging to the blood vessels. And one of the ways that we can reduce the amount of homocysteine is by having a number of the different methylating agents. Things like B vitamins, things like choline. There are a number of different actives, nutritional actives that play a role in this cascade. Now, for some people, they're at a reduced capacity of methylation because their genetic predisposition to the enzyme to help with methylation is reduced. So these are some of the clinical conditions that have been connected to reduced activity of methylene tetrahydrofolate reductase, the enzyme that is helpful in methylation. So it's important to be thinking about supplementation for faulty methylation or reduced methylation because most people don't have enough of the nutrients they need to reduce the homocysteine in the blood. So what I have here are some ideas to help with methylation and helping to reduce homocysteine in the blood. So taking in more green leafy vegetables, which are high in folate, of course, having a plant-based Mediterranean colorful way of eating, and of course, the B vitamins, as I've been speaking to, are instrumental in that whole biochemical pathway in order to reduce homocysteine. And then there can be lifestyle things that we do, like avoiding smoking, avoiding too much coffee, avoiding too much alcohol, and making sure that we remain physically active. So you can see that nutrition, supplements, and lifestyle all really come together in a nice holistic picture. And then we'll close on green and yellow phytonutrients. So green and yellow are typically found in many of the green foods. And in fact, you can even find orange and red phytonutrients under the green. So there are many of these different actives that we're getting with different activities, whether it's the nitrates that are helping to open up our blood vessels and help us relax. We also have a number of phytoestrogens in food that are protective for the breast tissue and prostate. We have phytosterols, which help with reducing the amount of cholesterol that's absorbed, methylating agents, as I've talked about, chlorophyll, and the indoles. So, in summary, again, the green system of health, the love, is all about cardiovascular health, looking at green leafy vegetables and plant foods for their pleiotropic, there are many different effects throughout the body. Also looking at, in the case of microgreens, or getting more potassium and magnesium through these foods, or vitamin K, focusing on coenzyme Q10 for more energy production by the heart muscle is key. And then, of course, we get the benefit of a full spectrum of different phytonutrients when we're eating plant foods. Thank you very much.